Have you ever felt a truth being whispered into your soul in the stillness of the early morning hours? Truths you fight to ignore, but that echo like drumbeats against your chest. There is a silent territory that exists between what your heart feels and what your mind dares to admit, and it is in this sacred space that the universe insists on showing you its most profound signs. When God decides to reveal the toxicity that has enveloped your soul like an invisible fog, the symptoms never arrive shouting. They whisper through coincidences, through patterns, and through a constant, nagging unease that you cannot quite name. The question that cuts you like a blade is this: why do you continue to ignore the warnings that come disguised as intuition? There are relationships that function as gilded prisons. They are beautiful to behold from the outside, yet utterly suffocating from within. And while you endlessly debate with yourself, torn between the guilt of leaving and the fear of staying, divine signs manifest like lighthouses in a storm, desperately trying to guide you away from the emotional shipwreck you cannot yet fully see. But here lies the cruelest of paradoxes. The more toxic the situation becomes, the more blind you become to the very distress signals that are erupting from your own soul. It is as if the emotional manipulation holds the power to disconnect you from your internal compass, the one that has always unfailingly known the way back home. How many times have you woken up with your heart racing for no apparent reason? How many times have you felt that you were losing essential parts of yourself, as if someone was stealing pieces of your very essence in the dead of night? These are not symptoms of madness. They are spiritual alarms, sounding off in Morse code, attempting to warn you about something your conscious mind is not yet willing to process. There is a secret language that God uses to communicate invisible dangers. It manifests through inexplicable physical sensations, recurring dreams, and a persistent, unshakable feeling that something is deeply wrong, even when everything on the surface appears to be perfect. The most disturbing discovery is realizing you may have been living for months, or even years inside a dynamic that devours your soul in slow motion, all while you rationalize every single warning sign, treating each one like a gift wrapped in beautiful golden paper. Relational toxicity does not scream. It whispers sweet, poisonous lies until you forget what the sound of your own voice even feels like. But there is a greater force observing, sending rescue signals through channels you have not yet learned to decode, and today, those codes will be revealed. If you feel that there is something hidden, waiting to be discovered, something that could change everything you believe about your relationship, then you must remain here. Subscribe to this channel, because some truths can only be heard when the soul is truly ready to awaken. God does not speak through thunderclaps and earthquakes when it comes to the heart. He whispers in a language that few can decipher. It is a communication that happens in the margins of everyday life, where each coincidence carries a heavy symbolic weight, and every repetition acts as a spiritual Morse code, trying to pierce the thick fog of denial. When you are immersed in a destructive dynamic, the divine signs manifest as a symphony of silent warnings. That one specific song that plays on the radio the exact moment you question the relationship. The Bible verse that leaps off the page at you like a spotlight in the dark. The snippet of a conversation between strangers in an elevator that echoes your own unvoiced doubts. The first language God uses is that of amplified intuition, that visceral, gut-deep feeling that makes your stomach physically clench when something is not right, even as your mind scrambles to rationalize it away. It's as if an internal lie detector exists within you, one that functions independently of logic, capturing emotional frequencies that your intellect cannot yet process. You feel that you are being observed by a higher power who sees through all the masks and performances, a presence that knows the truth behind every forced smile and every empty promise. This intuition is not paranoia. It is a spiritual guidance system. As Proverbs 3:5-6 advises, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. It's God trying to steer you away from the emotional iceberg dead ahead. Your dreams become territories of revelation, where profound symbols dance like shadows, trying to tell you what your waking mind cannot bear to admit. You awaken with fragmented images that feel more real than reality itself. You are trapped in gilded cages. You see mirrors that do not reflect your own face. You wander through endless mazes with no exit. You watch people you love transform into cold, menacing strangers. These are not merely the products of a restless imagination. They are letters sent from the divine through the language of symbols, where every single element carries a message about the true nature of the bond you are in. The repetition of these dreams is the universe banging on the door of your consciousness, insisting that you pay attention to what is being communicated from beyond the veil of sleep. Synchronicity intensifies to an almost unnerving degree. You see numbers that repeat constantly. You encounter situations that perfectly echo your relational dynamic. You overhear random conversations that seem directed specifically at you. It is as if the entire world has become a mirror for your emotional state, reflecting truths you do not yet have the courage to face on your own. You see street signs that carry symbolic messages. Books seem to fall open to the exact page you need to read, and people appear in your life bringing stories that perfectly mirror your own hidden reality. These are not coincidences. They are divine interventions disguised as chance, attempts by the universe to show you that there is a much larger narrative unfolding just beneath the surface of your personal story. Most profound of all is when you realize that your very body has become a receiver for spiritual signals, pains that appear without a medical cause, tensions that manifest in specific points, an exhaustion so deep that no amount of rest can cure it. It is as if every cell within you is a detector for emotional toxicity, registering the invisible impacts that your conscious mind cannot yet name. Your life force acts as a spiritual barometer, diminishing gradually in the presence of destructive dynamics and surging when you distance yourself from the source of the contamination. God is speaking through the sacred temple that is your body, sending alerts in a language that needs no words to be understood, only the courage to be heard. There is a scream that produces no sound. It is the cry of the soul when it finds itself trapped in dynamics that corrode its essence like a slow-acting acid. This silent scream manifests through symptoms that medicine cannot diagnose, a sadness that has no name, and a constant feeling of losing something precious without being able to identify what it is. It feels as if you are watching your own life through a foggy window, recognizing the outlines but missing the details that once gave existence its meaning. When God needs to alert you about toxic relationships, He often speaks through this language of the soul in distress, a communication that happens in the deepest layers of your being, where mere words become insufficient. The first manifestation of this internal cry is the gradual loss of genuine joy, or the superficial happiness you perform on social media. But that inner light that used to ignite spontaneously at life's small beauties, you notice that you smile less frequently, that your laughter sounds artificial, that a persistent melancholy hovers like a fog over your days. It's as if someone has slowly turned down the volume on your capacity to feel pleasure, leaving you in a state of emotional numbness where even the experiences that once filled you with life now pass by, unnoticed. This is not ordinary depression. It is the soul signaling that it is being suffocated by a toxic atmosphere that is devouring its spiritual vitality. A spiritual isolation installs itself like a shadow that follows your every step, creating an invisible barrier between you and your connection to the sacred. Prayers that once flowed naturally now feel like empty words echoing in a void. Bible verses that used to touch your heart now sound like dead text. The divine presence that you once felt with clarity now seems as distant as a faded star. This distancing doesn't happen because God has moved away. It happens because the relational toxicity creates a spiritual static that interferes with the frequency of divine communication. The toxic relationship acts as an emotional jammer, blocking the very channels through which grace used to flow. Your essential identity begins to fragment like a cracked mirror, where each piece reflects a different version of who you used to be. You find yourself questioning truths that were once unshakable, doubting characteristics that always defined your personality, feeling like a stranger within your own skin. It's as if you were being slowly erased and rewritten by another's hands, losing the authenticity that connected you to your divine essence. Old dreams seem like childish nonsense. Passions that once defined you become distant memories, and you find yourself living a life you don't recognize as your own, a borrowed existence, where you are merely a supporting actor in your own story. The most devastating moment is when you realize you have lost the ability to trust your own perception of reality, a phenomenon psychologists call gaslighting, but which spiritually represents a profound disconnection from the inner wisdom God planted in every human being. You constantly second-guess yourself. You doubt your own memories. You accept versions of reality that flatly contradict what your senses have captured. It's as if a silent war is taking place inside your mind, where your divine intuition battles against externally imposed narratives, This is the most dangerous moment in any toxic relationship, when you lose the internal compass that always guided you back home, leaving you adrift in an ocean of confusion where even God's signs seem distorted by the fog of emotional manipulation. Feminine intuition is one of the most sacred gifts God has bestowed, an innate ability to perceive energies, to detect falsehoods through micro-expressions, to sense danger before it even manifests visibly. When you are in a toxic relationship, this internal compass becomes one of the first targets of attack. It is systematically dismissed, ridiculed, and sabotaged until you lose confidence in your own perception. You're imagining things. That's all in your head. You're being overly dramatic. These phrases act like viruses, infecting your ability to trust the spiritual warning system that has always protected you. God shows you the importance of reconnecting with this ancestral wisdom by sending signs that gradually reawaken your trust, as if He is whispering, "Trust what you feel," even when everyone tries to convince you otherwise. A woman's body is a sophisticated emotional radar that registers toxicity long before the conscious mind processes the information. That tightening in your stomach when he comes home, the tension in your shoulders during certain conversations, the headache that appears in the same contexts, these are not trivial psychosomatic symptoms. They are physical alarms that God installed as a protection system. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a spiritual antenna calibrated to detect emotional frequencies that others cannot perceive. When you start medicating these symptoms, instead of investigating their root causes, you are silencing the very voice of God, trying to warn you about energetically contaminated environments. The wisdom of the body is a divine language that must be respected, not suppressed. The capacity for emotional reading is a prophetic gift that allows you to see beyond words, capturing hidden intentions through tones of voice, unconscious gestures, and meaningful pauses. When this ability is constantly questioned in a relationship, you are being disconnected from one of your primary tools of spiritual discernment. "You're misinterpreting me. I never said that. You're twisting my words." These systematic denials act as a gradual eraser of your ability to decode subliminal messages. God gave you eyes to see beyond the veil of appearances, and when someone insists on blindfolding those eyes, it is because there is something they don't want you to see. A woman who loses trust in her own emotional readings becomes vulnerable to manipulations she would have once detected instantly. The isolation in toxic relationships does not happen abruptly. It is a surgical process of separation that cuts one by one the threads that keep you rooted in reality and community. It begins with seemingly innocent comments about your friends. "She seems a little jealous of you. Do you think he really cares about you? Doesn't your family interfere too much in our relationship?" These tiny seeds of doubt are planted with the precision of an expert gardener who knows exactly where to find the fertile soil of insecurity. God shows you this pattern through a growing awareness. You start to notice that the people who support you the most are the very ones who receive the most subtle criticism, as if there is a silent campaign to remove any external source of validation that could contradict the controlling narrative. The social calendar becomes a battlefield disguised as a negotiation, where every invitation, every event, every moment of socializing becomes a reason for conflict, masked as concern. "Are you sure you want to go? It sounds boring. Wouldn't it be better if we just stayed in tonight? We haven't had time for just us." They don't know you like I know you. Gradually, you learn that saying yes to the outside world has become synonymous with saying no to domestic peace. The isolation is disguised as special intimacy, as if you are a unique couple who needs no one else to be complete. God alerts you to this gilded cage through a rising anxiety when you realize your social life has been subtly hollowed out. Conversations with those close to you begin to be monitored in an almost imperceptible way. He doesn't explicitly forbid them, but his mood after these interactions becomes a thermometer you learn to read very carefully. There is always an indirect question about what was discussed, a subtle tension when you return from meeting a friend, an interrogation disguised as interest. "How was it? What did you guys talk about? Wow, you were gone for a long time." You realize you have started to edit your conversations before they even happen, already anticipating which topics might cause discomfort later. God shows you this invisible surveillance through a feeling of being watched, even when you're alone, as if you've developed an internal policeman who monitors your thoughts and relationships. Awakening to the reality of a toxic relationship is like emerging from a cave where you have lived for so long that you have forgotten what sunlight looks like. At first, The clarity hurts your eyes, the truth burns like fire in your soul. And there is a part of you that wants to run back to the familiar darkness, where at least you knew the shape of the walls. But God does not abandon you in this moment of transition. He sends signs of encouragement through small, everyday miracles, as if He is saying, I have been here all along, waiting for you to remember the way home. A song that plays at the exact moment you need to hear its message. A scripture that leaps from the page as a direct answer to your silent prayer. An unexpected encounter with someone who reminds you of who you used to be before you got lost in the labyrinth of emotional manipulation. The reconnection with your divine essence happens in layers, as if you were unearthing a treasure that was buried under years of emotional debris. First comes the return of anger, not destructive rage, but the sacred anger that protects your dignity and establishes healthy boundaries. It is the same righteous anger Jesus felt when He drove the merchants from the temple, a divine indignation in the face of the desecration of something holy. Then comes a purifying sadness, the tears that mourn not only the losses but also the rediscovery of your own capacity to feel without asking for permission. And finally, like the dawn after a night that was far too long, joy returns, simple, unexplainable, and unapologetic, as if you have rediscovered your right to exist without justification. The woman who liberates herself from a toxic relationship does not return to the previous version of herself. She evolves into a wiser, stronger, more connected version. It is as if she has passed through a purifying fire that burned away everything superficial and revealed the pure gold of her essence. This new woman can recognize manipulation from a mile away. She sets boundaries with the firmness of one who knows her own worth, and she loves with the wisdom of one who has learned the difference between genuine connection and unhealthy dependence. She becomes a lighthouse for other women still navigating in the darkness, living proof that it is possible to escape the emotional prison and build a life based on self-love and divine dignity. Your story will become a bridge for other women who are still lost in the same labyrinth. Your healing will become an inspiration for those who still believe there is no way out. And when you look back, you will see that every tear was a seed, every pain was a birth, and every moment of despair was an invitation to draw closer to God. You did not merely survive, you blossomed. If this message has touched your soul, if you have recognized your own story in these words, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel, because together we are stronger, and your freedom is the key that can open the door for the liberation of many others.